Jeff Ray, General Counsel of Beretta, is with us in studio this afternoon. Jeff, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Cam, thanks for having me back on the show.
You bet. As we talk about all of the gun control bills that are live and moving in Maryland, actually, just during the break, you said a bill passed out of the Senate?
Yeah, I just got word that Senate Bill 281, which is the governor's bill, just passed the Senate, was voted through.
All right. So now if this bill passes the Assembly and becomes law, I mean, it's the governor's bill, he's not going to veto it, what would this mean for manufacturers in the state of Maryland, like Beretta?
Well, there are two parts of that story. One is the bill as originally introduced would ban products that we make. It's not only Beretta USA, but Benelli USA is also in Maryland, and Stoger Industries. Benelli has 6 shotguns that would be banned by the legislation, 4 of which are used for turkey hunting. They're camo version semi-automatic turkey guns with a pistol grip stock, and that's what makes them dangerous. And the other 2 are the Benelli tactical guns, the M4, the classic M4,
right,
and the M3. On the Beretta side, we have a carbine, the CX4, that would be banned, and we have a brand new rifle we're coming out with called the ARX-160, which is a semi-automatic rifle, similar to the AR platform, but more advanced in a lot of ways. And we're planning to actually manufacture that in Accokeek, Maryland, which is in southern Maryland. But based on the legislation, we're having to evaluate whether we're going to do that. We may have to move that operation and maybe more to another state.
Because of the way the law is written, would you be allowed to manufacture that gun, or would you be prohibited under law from manufacturing it?
Well, what the law says is that we could the law is, as happens, confused. It's a hot mess, as they say. It has a provision that says that manufacturers can ship their products out of the state to customers in other states, law enforcement agencies, and all that. But it retains a provision that prohibits us from importing high-capacity magazines, which we assemble into not only the rifles, but all the handguns that we manufacture, including, by the way, the standard M9, the standard sidearm for the U.S. Armed Forces.
Right.
It prohibits us from warehousing or keeping products that are classified as assault weapons under the new bill. So we can somehow achieve this metaphysical rarity of making and shipping something, but not actually having it in inventory or storage if it's within the state of Maryland.
Yeah. And so this is, I think, a perfect example of what I'm calling the hypocrisy of the gun control advocates and the anti-gunners. Because what they're in essence telling you is, Jeff, we think your products are horrible. We don't think anybody should be allowed to own them. You're probably a rotten person too. We really don't like your company, but we love your tax dollars, and we don't want to be seen as job killers. So we don't want the people of Maryland to have these items, but we guess we'll allow you to sell these horrible things to people outside of the state of Maryland. Now, at that point, to me, all of their emotional appeals and their emotional arguments about why these gun control laws are needed and how horrible we are for clinging to our rights, they all fall apart. Because if they really, truly believed what they were saying, they wouldn't carve out these exemptions. They wouldn't try to make it possible, in their mind anyway, for companies to remain in the state.
Right. I mean, you do have some legislators who give lip service to that, and you have some who, if they had their druthers, they don't want to expose themselves in this way.
Right.
They'd be happy not to have a firearm manufacturer or any kind of gun dealer or gun sold in their state. Beretta, the group of Beretta companies has spent about $30 million plus in taxes in Maryland just in about the last 10 years. We've invested about $75 million, and we planned a huge additional investment in the next couple of years, and this is what we get.
Yeah, yeah. Have you had any discussions with the governor's office?
I have. I've talked to his chief of staff. I haven't spoken to the governor personally. I've talked to a number of other legislators. There are a lot of legislators in Maryland who are vexed by all this, but unfortunately, as we saw from the vote today, Senate Bill 281 passed, and unfortunately, our supporters are in the minority.
What about over on the Assembly side? Do you think the same metric applies right now?
It's hard to say. The House Judiciary Committee hears this legislation first. There's actually a hearing tomorrow, Friday, at 1 o'clock, starts at 1 o'clock. I'll be testifying. The chairman of the committee is Joe Valerio, and he has been a pretty strong supporter, not just for Beretta, but for Second Amendment rights. But Representative Valerio, when Governor Glendening tried to require internal locks for handguns about 10 years or so, ago, that legislation did get through his committee. So whether he can stop this or not, I don't know. The last time an assault, so-called assault weapon ban was attempted in Maryland, it did get through the Senate, and Joe's committee killed it. I think it was 16-2. But the thing that's different this time is you've got the governor backing the bill, and the governor throws a lot of weight in the state of Maryland, and you've got Bloomberg throwing a lot of money into this state right now. So we have that type of dynamic that we haven't seen before, and whether the members of Delegate Valerio's committee will stand strong with us, we'll find out.
When you talk about Bloomberg spending a lot of money in the state, where is he spending that money?
Well, he's spending it with the law firm that we used to use as lobbyists in Maryland. I got a call from a longtime friend, highly respected colleague of mine who has been Beretta's lobbyist for many years in December, telling me he's been conflicted out, but his law firm was hired away from us by Bloomberg. So to do that, since that firm, we've used that firm for many, many years, and probably would use it for many years more, Bloomberg comes in right before Christmas last year, hires them away from us, and that shows you the type of money he's willing to throw at this issue to make it go his way.
Oh yeah, no, that's the thing. I mean, we've talked about the Illinois 2nd Congressional District, and what I think really was an underwhelming performance for his $2 million. But
Right.
I think it was Andrew Rullandundum who pointed out in a story today, NRA ILA's public affairs director. He said, there are billions of reasons to be concerned about Michael Bloomberg,
Right.
and there are indeed. He has very, very deep pockets. He's clearly invested, no pun intended, in this issue. And he's not going to stop. He's not going to go away. And his attitude, I think, Jeff, honestly, Bloomberg would probably love to see Beretta leave the state of Maryland and not find any other place to go. But that's not the business environment for firearms companies right now. I mean, that's the thing. These guys got to understand there are plenty of places. Have you been approached by other states saying, "Will you come here"?
It's almost easier to ask what states I haven't been approached by. What troubles me about this issue, and we're seeing it, as you know very well, in Connecticut as well, you've got long-standing traditional gun manufacturers in these states, and you could call them liberal states. That's probably a fair characterization.
Sure.
But at least we've got a foothold, and we've got a counterbalancing voice within those states. We provide jobs, we provide tax revenue and all that. If all the gun manufacturers move to the gun-friendly states only, you really polarize the country in a way it isn't now. So, but to your question, I've received dozens and dozens of calls from all sorts of gun-friendly states around the country, and you can probably list off the usual suspects. I mean, Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Alabama, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm encouraged by that. I think there's even a letter-writing campaign going on in Idaho right now to talk us into going out there. But I'm encouraged that we have friends. But that's the part of this issue that was most troubling even to Mr. Beretta. It's that, the Beretta family's been in the same small town in northern Italy for almost 500 years. It's the oldest industrial dynasty in the world, not just gun company, but of any type of industrial dynasty. When they put roots into an area, they stay there. We started the Beretta USA facility in 1977. Mr. Beretta has a home in the area, comes here all the time, loves Maryland, loves the people who've worked for him. Our average employee's been there for 15 years. He wants to protect them and continue working with them. And then at the same time, you've got the governor and you've got some legislators saying, you know what, we don't really like what you do. So he's got that mixed message. We do have friends in the legislature. We do have friends in the state. We have a great constituency of customers within the state. But at the same time, it's like being slapped in the face when you're pouring yourself into this economy and into this environment. And it's troubling for him, I know.
Oh yeah, and look, from a business perspective, I mean, I know from a personal perspective, as you say, to be treated this way, as a good business. And I bet if you talk to people in the Accokeek area, they'll tell you they love having Beretta there.
Right.
But from a business perspective, maybe you talked about the expansion that you guys have planned. It's really hard to actually put these things in place when you've got such a hostile environment from the legislature that you don't know, how much more restricted you're going to be every time the legislature goes back into session. I mean, we've talked with companies in Illinois that Les Bayer Custom moved his shop, right across the river from Illinois into Iowa, And he talked about the same thing. You know, we've got people who've lived here, they've grown up in this community. We didn't want to move far away, so you know, luckily he was right there on the border, just able to move across the river, and a lot of people didn't even have to, you know, change their home address. But that's not going to be the case. I know that if Maryland decides they don't want the business of Beretta and Benelli and these manufacturers, and you said something as well that the way this bill has been written, this could impact firearms retailers as well, right?
Yeah, I mentioned that there are two parts of this process. There was the bill as it was originally introduced by the governor, and then after it passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, it went to the full floor of the Senate, and there it had all sorts of amendments added to it. Amendments that I would guess wouldn't have passed if they'd been considered at the committee level because some of them are so remarkable. But one that has passed as part of the legislation, if you have a dealer in Maryland, say Bass Pro, which sells hundreds, certainly, maybe thousands of guns a year, I don't know, and they're keeping their 4473s or paperwork for each transaction, this legislation now requires the state police to audit their records at least every 2 years. And if they find one paperwork violation, it's a $1,000 fine. If they find a second violation, so somebody's dropped a form, or lost it, misfiled it, it got paper clipped onto the back of something else, and they can't find it, it's up to 3 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. Now, if I'm the CEO of Bass Pro, or even the regional manager, I'm not going to subject my employees to that type of risk. And in fact, I don't know that it's going to be my counter clerk that's going to be at risk. It might be me.
Yeah.
So my prediction is that single provision in the new statute could eliminate every firearm dealer in Maryland. And just to put that in perspective, in order to sell firearms in Maryland, and manufacture them, Beretta USA, Benelli USA, and Stoeger are also all licensed Maryland dealers. So we're subject to the same audit every 2 years, and we're subject to the same rules. Now, in the case of Beretta USA, we literally have millions of pages of records relating to firearms transactions. We import, we manufacture, we sell. Benelli's the same way, Stoeger's the same way. So if out of 1 million papers that are audited by the state police, they find 2 errors, somebody could be going to prison.
That is unbelievable. I mean, you know, we're seeing the true face here. You know, these are the types of things that aren't reported at all. I mean, what's being reported are, we love hunters, and we're not trying to ban any guns, and use a shotgun in self-defense. Buy a shotgun. I mean, that's what's being reported. But when you actually see the legislation that's being proposed, there is this outright hostility to the idea of gun ownership, to the idea of gun manufacturing. They want to kill off. They want to do to this country what they did to Chicago, and what they did to Washington, D.C., and what they've done to New York City and L.A., to place the Second Amendment outside of the reach of most Americans, and really to try to shut down as much of this industry as they can.
Right, and Senator Frosch is the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee in Maryland. And I don't know that he proposed this particular provision as an amendment, but he had introduced a bill himself, a separate bill from the governor's bill, that had this concept in it. So he is extremely anti-gun. And I would not be, and he's a smart guy, I would not be surprised if he didn't support this and explain his support to others, saying, well, you know what, these people need to take their record-keeping requirements seriously. But knowing that the actual impact of it could be that he eliminates all firearm dealerships within the state of Maryland. He basically has made it more risky, more dangerous to sell a firearm than to commit aggravated assault in the state of Maryland.
You know, they've made it more dangerous to possess a 10-round magazine in New York than to possess child pornography. So I'm not actually surprised by that. I mean, again, and I wish, Jeff, that more Americans, including these low information voters, could get that perspective, that sense of perspective of here's how out of control these folks are acting right now.
Right. Yeah, one thing I see in these legislative debates is that the people who support the legislation either don't think through what they're doing. They're told something and they accept it whole cloth, or they don't care, or, and this is the worst category, they do know what they're doing and they do it on purpose. And they rely upon the lack of information, the lack of discussion among even fellow legislators, and that's what we're seeing right now in Maryland.
Really? I mean, even you say the legislators. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised by that. We've seen people playing solitaire, legislators playing solitaire on their computers while these hearings are going on. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised that the legislators aren't asking the sponsor. All right, so let me make sure I understand this clearly. There's really not a lot of homework being done on some of this stuff.
Well, what happens is you don't have legislators who are seeing the things from these issues from the point of view of the dealer or the manufacturer. You do have pro-gun legislators, and Maryland has got some great pro-gun legislators. Kittleman, Astle, there are a bunch of different, Nancy Jacobs, there are a bunch of great pro-gun people in the state of Maryland. But even they don't they're not business people, and they're not looking at a provision and thinking, okay, what are all the implications? And to be frank, it's not always easy because you have this is a 64-page piece of legislation now. You have a lot of things that have been introduced that are very complicated, but that's why you have hearings. That's why you try to explain these things. The problem with the Maryland legislation is the Senate hearing on this was based on a very limited version of the bill that was introduced by the governor. When it went to the full Senate floor, then it exploded with all these additional amendments. So those amendments weren't subject to the scrutiny of the public until just last night, actually.
Okay, but now over on the House side, they will be.
On the House side now, we're forewarned. So the House bill that's being considered is the same as the governor's original bill.
Yeah.
And it has the issues that are associated with that, banning hardware, banning high-cap magazines, banning some types of so-called assault rifles, banning so-called assault shotguns. But when we get our testimony in now, we're going to testify not only against the bill, but we're going to say, and by the way, the Senate version that's coming down after this is even worse. I mean, it is horrendous.
Talking with Jeff Ray, General Counsel for Beretta USA. If folks want to support Beretta and want to support Maryland gun owners, I mean, what's your advice right now, Jeff?
Well, the best thing to do right now would be to email members of the House Judiciary Committee. I don't have a link right now, but if you go to it's maryland.gov, you can find links to the full roster of the different committees. Each of those on the Maryland website, government website, there's a link where you can email them directly off of the website. So I would go through and start emailing all those legislators. We started a campaign, we meaning the Beretta Group, started a campaign like this last night, and some of the members of the committee have already had to modify their web pages because they're being flooded with so many inquiries and complaints that they've now had to put like an automated response to all these things.
Wow.
But I'd say keep it coming. And if you're in the Maryland area, if you're can make it to Annapolis tomorrow, go to the hearing, be there. In the Senate hearing, there were probably 6,000 or 7,000 people who came to that hearing, and I'd say 95 to 96% or so were pro-gun people. It was great to see.
Absolutely. Jeff, thank you so much for coming to the studio, sir. Hope we can do it again soon, and best of luck to you and everybody at Beretta.
Thanks, Cam. I appreciate it.